Good evening, Michael Usher here, standing by to bring you the latest from 7 News. Tonight, the coldest snap in almost 20 years. Melbourne hit by howling winds, blizzards in the Alps as wild weather rips through the southeast. We'll tell you what's to come. Tributes after tragedy, how the Melbourne Football Club plans to honour Brad Green's wife this weekend following her shock death. Spying in the name of safety, the new laws forcing tech companies to hand over your information, how it will impact the economy. Gemma Acton explains that. Unprecedented demand, flu vaccines run low in some cities, what you need to know. Not so picture perfect, why this photo of Australia's first families raising some eyebrows this evening. And the Duchess versus Donald, the latest from London, as Meghan decides not to join the rest of the royals when they meet the US President. All those stories are coming up tonight on the latest from 7 News. Hope you can join me then.
7news.com.au, happening now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Michael Usher and here's the latest from 7 News this Wednesday evening. 6 kids, 1 stolen car, a terrible crash. Live to Brisbane for a developing story. 1 dead and more young lives in the balance tonight. The southeast snap frozen, Melbourne's coldest May Day in 2 decades, live with tomorrow's forecast. Tension at sea, Australian helicopters zapped by lasers from Chinese maritime militia. The latest from Parliament House. Breaking news from the UK, PM hopeful Boris Johnson facing court, accused of misconduct, live to London. The Duchess and Donald Trump reports Meghan will politely decline to join the royals when they meet with the US President. And our first family minus the polish. Why a closer look's required at this happy snap of the Morrisons. We begin tonight with new details on an horrific crash in Brisbane's northern suburbs, which has claimed the life of 1 teenager and left 5 others injured. Our reporter Sarah Greenhalgh is at the Queensland Children's Hospital tonight. Sarah, good evening. What's the latest on their conditions?
Good evening, Michael. Well, tonight a 14-year-old boy is in a critical condition here, while 4 young girls aged 10, 13, 14 and 16 are also being treated in hospital. We understand one of those girls is also critical.
2 investigations into 2 terrible crashes. Sarah Greenhalgh in Brisbane, thank you for that this evening. Now to the polar blast that sent temperatures plummeting across the eastern states, with Melbourne recording its coldest May Day in almost 2 decades. Let's bring in reporter Estelle Griepink now. Estelle, good evening to you. The icy conditions have had some tragic consequences this evening.
Good evening, Michael. Sadly, that's right. What we believe has happened this afternoon is that a ute has slid on a heavy layer of hail on a busy freeway. It's then hit a tree and almost split in 2, and the driver has tragically died at the scene. Now,
All right, job done. Get inside, and your crew as well. Estelle Griepink in Melbourne, thank you for that. We have some breaking news tonight. Asylum seekers have made it to Christmas Island for the first time in 5 years. Now, tomorrow's Australian newspaper reveals the boat with 20 Sri Lankans on board. That's the vision of the next story that's coming up here. I'll carry on with it, though. With 20 Sri Lankans, including 1 baby on board, were intercepted by a Navy vessel. Those on board were delivered to Christmas Island, the Australian reports, who say they spent a few days undergoing health and security checks. None was found to have a legitimate claim to asylum, and they were all returned to Colombo on a government charter jet. So breaking news there that asylum seekers, first time in 5 years, did make it to Christmas Island but turned around and flown back to Sri Lanka. Now, it's been revealed Melbourne drug kingpin Tony Mockbell was left with brain injuries after that frenzied prison attack which almost claimed his life. That's the vision we were just seeing. We'll bring that up again. His attackers, 2 21-year-old inmates, face court today pleading guilty. Court documents reveal one taunted Mockbell during the attack, repeatedly shouting, "You're not an enforcer." Mockbell still recovering, and his injuries have affected his speech. Australian pharmacies are running out of flu vaccines because of an unprecedented demand for protection against the virus. It's the worst flu season in some time, with cases skyrocketing compared with last year's numbers. The Federal Health Department's urging patients to call around GP clinics and pharmacies to find vaccines. The Melbourne Footy Club has tonight confirmed players will pay tribute to former champion Brad Green's late wife. Anna Green passed away suddenly this week from a cardiac arrest. She was 40 years old. The Demons will wear black armbands to honour Anna during Saturday's match against Adelaide. Chinese maritime militia have been linked to laser attacks on Australian Navy pilots in the disputed South China Sea. Let's bring in our political correspondent Tim Lester, who's in Canberra tonight, as he always is. Tim, good evening. Where have these claims come from?
Good evening, Michael. Yes, this is during incidents that occurred during a 3-month engagement for the ADF in the region in South and Southeast Asia.
All right, for explaining all that, Tim Lester, thank you.
Good on you. Thanks, Michael.
To news just in from London, Boris Johnson, the front-runner to be the next British Prime Minister, has been summoned to face court over misconduct claims. Let's bring in Europe correspondent Laurel Irving for us this evening. Laurel, good evening. Another twist and turn in the whole Brexit story. What has Boris been accused of?
Unpredictable. Nobody knows what's going to happen. That's exactly right.
Completely. It's a circus. All right, Laurel Irving in London. Thank you for that this evening. And staying in the UK, the Duchess of Sussex looks set to skip a meeting with Donald Trump during the US President's state visit to the UK. The 3-day tour will include a lunch with several members of the royal family. William, Kate and Harry are all listed, but Meghan is not. The likely reason, of course, is baby Archie, but in the past she has expressed her dislike for the President, describing him as divisive. How about this? Having legalised elephant hunting and sparking a heated debate, Botswana has now taken an unusual step, enlisting a Hollywood publicity company to improve its image and defend that decision. The US company, called 42 West, is reportedly being paid a 6-figure sum to provide a 2-month strategy to sell the backflip to the Western world. Its celebrity clients include Meryl Streep and Tom Cruise. Botswana is home to a third of the world's African elephants. The government says the ban was lifted due to a rise in human-elephant conflict. Australian honeymoon killer Lewis Bennett has apologised to the family of his wife Isabella as he was sentenced to 8 years jail. Let's bring in our US Bureau Chief Ashley Mullaney now, who is in court and joins us from Miami. Ash Mullaney in Miami this evening, thank you. Well, under new Australian encryption laws, tech companies are being forced to spy on users in an attempt to make the digital world safer. Let's bring in Network Finance Editor Gemma Acton now. Gem, good evening to you. How are the tech companies affected by these new laws?
Right, so these laws were pushed through Parliament last December, and both at the time and ever since we've seen a huge pushback on the part of the tech companies who want these laws either watered down or, best case scenario for them, reversed. What we effectively have here is a battle between the national security agencies, who are saying these laws are essential in order to protect us from terrorists and criminals.
Really interesting. All right, Gem, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Still to come, crowdfunding controversy over the extreme lengths to book an appointment with a renowned surgeon. Can you spot why this family photo of Australia's first family has caused a bit of a stir today? And extreme sandcastle building, but can this masterpiece break a world record? It's enormous. That's all next on the latest from 7 News. We're back in a minute. Well, Ivan Milat is back behind bars following a stint in a public hospital where he's been treated for terminal cancer. Police believed to be pushing the serial killer for a deathbed confession to perhaps other crimes, other murders he's suspected of committing. Let's bring in author and journalist Caroline Overington and TV personality Jan Fran to discuss all of this. Thank you both for being here. Caroline, good to see you again. And Jan, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Good to have you here. Let's talk about Ivan Milat. He's right now in Long Bay's top security hospital wing following his stay at the Prince of Wales Hospital, where we understand he was visited by family. Caroline, let's ask you this first. This is a bit of a test of our consciousness, in a way, on our views. He's getting top-level care, visited by family. Should he get that if he's not willing to cooperate with police in his dying days?
Look, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say we are not barbarians. We're not. He has displayed the absolute worst of human nature, and in response, we should show the best. And he has to be given appropriate care for somebody in his position, but I would dearly and desperately like him to help the families, in particular the ones of the murder victims who are still asking the question as to whether he's responsible. There's one particular victim, her head is missing. I think there is some real work that he could do in his last days on earth. But you're dealing with somebody who has never shown any remorse, never shown any willingness to cooperate, a complete narcissistic personality disorder where he cares really only for himself. And so the likelihood that we will get the answer is very slim, in which case I think we maintain our dignity.
I interviewed the lead detective last night, Clive Small, who said, Jan, that to this day Milat believes that he's on top of this and has been from the beginning, never confessed to a thing, always believed he had the upper hand on the police. Therefore, it's caused a lot of controversy that here we are affording him the very best of care and health care. As I said, it's a bit of a test of all of our beliefs. What do you think? Should he get the same level of health care as any other person walking into a hospital, particularly given he will not confess to a thing?
The short answer is yes. I mean, Ivan Milat is an Australian citizen. And can I just go on the record and say that I wish Ivan Milat the worst. I think a lot of people do, and I think rightly so. But he's an Australian citizen. And as an Australian citizen, he is entitled to, at the very least, the base level of healthcare that any other Australian citizen is entitled to.
But do you lose those rights as a citizen if you've committed what he's found guilty of committing, those terrible serial killings of the backpackers?
No, I still think that you have right to healthcare even though you have committed terrible crimes. And we see this, you know, time and time again in prison. There is healthcare available in prison, and as it should be. And I think the question for me is this then becomes quite a bit of a slippery slope. So if you start denying healthcare to prisoners because they behave in a certain way or they don't behave in a certain way, I can't help but wonder what's next. Will you deny them food? Will you deny them water? Will torture be used? I mean, these are the kind of questions that this kind of behaviour will lead to. And, you know, there is that kind of Michelle Obama-esque saying, when they go low, you go high, which I think we sort of have to do in this case.
Now, let's move on to the next one, which caused a bit of controversy. All right, thank you, Jan, thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, you're so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate that, Carolyn. Good
Great
as
to
always.
see you.
Thank
Great
you.
to see you.
Well, still to come, curveball. The moment a woman made one of the most embarrassing sport cameos ever. Ouch. And not your average sandcastle. We'll show you this attempt to break a world record. That's next on the latest from 7 News. Welcome back. We're taking a live look over Cappadocia, that's in central Turkey, known for its distinctive rock formations, as we can see there. It's currently around 32 degrees there, a lot warmer than it is in parts of Australia right now. So let's have a look at our local temperatures. Sunshine for Sydney, tops of 18 degrees. Melbourne, chilly, as we reported earlier, 13 with a few showers, possible hail in the morning. 16 in Adelaide with a possible early shower. And in some other parts of the country, let's have a look at those. Dubbo, 14, partly cloudy. Mount Isa, 23. 25 and sunny in Bundaberg. 15 and partly cloudy in Mildura with some light winds, but fresh. Well, far from pitch perfect is how the first ball at a Chicago baseball game is being described. There it goes. Look out, photographer. This White Sox employee's pitch went disastrously wrong, flying straight into the lens of that photographer, Darren Georgia. Despite the hit, though, true professional, he still managed to capture the shot and later reported that both he and his camera were unharmed, unlike her dignity and pride, which was very damaged. Now, while it may be beyond beach weather here, mostly, check out these incredible sand sculpture artists in Germany. At 17.5 metres, that castle there is due to set a new world record, with officials from the Guinness World Record arriving in just a few days' time. Let's hope they finish it in time. It's a big effort. And before we go this evening, our final frame. It's a moment in history. Today, tradition was broken at the Cabinet swearing-in ceremony. The Prime Minister asked his front bench team to stand as Ken Wyatt was sworn in, as he proudly called himself today the first Aboriginal person to be the Minister for Indigenous Australians. Wearing a traditional kangaroo skin given to him by Perth's Noongar elders, Mr Wyatt took the oath from Governor-General Sir Peter Cosgrove and enjoyed a few hugs. It's an historic first in federal politics, which is why it is very justly tonight our final frame. Thank you for your company this evening. Sunrise will be back first thing tomorrow morning from 5:30 from the team here at 7 News. Around the world and all corners of Australia, that is the latest. I'm Michael Usher. Good night.
7news.com.au. Happening now.